Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very good evening to you, and thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum, coming to you live on Radio 1 FM 90, which is also broadcasting live on its website, www.radio1fm90.com. You click on the icon with the word Listen Live. We're also live on the different radio listening apps, which can be obtained from the Google Store of your smartphone. We're also live on DSTV, and our audio channel there is 897. Today, we will be following up the new developments as far as the strike called by traders in Kampala is concerned. Well, this strike began yesterday. Traders closed down their shops. They're complaining about a number of issues, including the implementation of IFRIS, that is the electronic physical receipting and invoicing system that Uganda Revenue Authority and government says is essential in ensuring that traders comply with the payment of VAT. And they also complain about import duty on fabrics and garments. They say it's a little bit high. They're complaining about non-standardized valuation guidelines for goods. And there's also complaints about foreigners, wholesalers, and investors actually dealing in wholesale, dealing in the type of businesses that ordinary Ugandans are actually involved in. There was a meeting yesterday at the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and the outcome of that meeting is a communication from the Minister, Matia Kasaija, requesting the traders to reopen their shops and that pending the resolution of their issues within 2 weeks. The traders had a meeting to discuss this response from government, and they have decided that the strike will go on. So we'll be looking at the real issues behind this strike and also the decisions the traders are basing on to continue with the strike, yet they have the ears of the government, knowing that also the president intends to meet them on Friday. I have two guests in studio. Mr. Joshua Mawerere, he's the chairman of the Youth League under the Kampala City Traders Association. Good evening, Mr. Mawerere. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, and good evening, listeners.
In studio to give us a wider perspective of this ongoing challenge and the economy at large is Dr. Fred Muhumza, senior economist. He's also a lecturer who is also the director of the Economic Forum at the Makerere University Business School. Good evening, Dr. Muhumza, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, our listeners and my fellow panelists and your host.
All right. My name is Kenneth Lukwagandason, your host. And I will begin with you, Joshua. The government has communicated to you and indicated that they understand clearly the issues that you raised. They have asked to consult and have a firm decision or a final decision taken within the next 2 weeks. When this communication came out, you reacted. How did the traders receive this communication?
Thank you very much. This communication that has been given to us today, we are actually not very happy with it. That's number one. Why? It's because we've been talking about these issues for a long time. We've talked about IFRIS from the time it was introduced. The reason why the traders were calling it a double tax, another tax, it is because at the point of introduction, it came with 2.5 to acquire the display devices that come with it. So this issue, we've talked about it for about 2-3 years since IFRIS came. And if government is saying that they need 2 weeks to resolve that, our question is, why the delay? Why didn't they respond to it ever since we've been discussing this issue? And then they need more 2 weeks. The other thing, saying that we need to open up our shops and then let them have the 2 weeks, I think we are unable to do that. We strongly think that government is just buying in time. The issues we're talking about are issues we talked about way back, and we've engaged in several discussions. Reports have been written from the tax advisor to the ministry, and the discussions have been on. Now, if they never found a solution then, shall we have one in the 2 weeks? That's where we stand. So we're saying we won't be able to open up.
All right, maybe we've begun on the wrong point. Let's begin by understanding the issues that you took in the meeting that happened last night. What are your demands?
We have a basket of demands, and I'll break them. One, we are talking about INFRIS. INFRIS is a system that was introduced to do tax, we could say tax collection.
And
it monitors the traders and be able to determine the taxes. Now, our issue with INFRIS is, one, it does not fully settle into the dynamics of the businesses that we are running, because it has a cost it comes with. You need to have a device that hosts INFRIS. It means a trader has to buy one. Then you need to have a person dedicated to punch in all this information into that system. If you do it yourself as a business owner, then you cannot sell at the same time. The other issue we have with INFRIS is the way it was introduced was wrong. That's why people think it's a double tax, because it came with a cost of 2.5 million to acquire the devices. They went back, tried to change that, came back with another version that is device-based, but they never took time to sensitize the traders, give the different sector appeals to be able to receive acceptance and onboarding of the traders. The other issue we have with INFRIS is it is taking on everybody, even those that don't fall into the threshold that they're talking about of 150 million. And that is causing a lot of confusion. So we would want that to be worked on. Then the other thing that we discussed about was the import duty on fabrics. This is something we've talked about ever since they introduced kilograms on textile and garments. Textile, it is $3.0 per kilogram. On garments, it is $3.5 per kilogram. Now, when did the SI unit of cloth become kilograms? It is a wrong way of measuring garments and textile. We're saying that they should go back to what it was, the quality of the garments. Because in many cases, clothes that cost less money are even heavier than those that cost more money. So you'll be charging me highly for something I'm going to sell for goods. The tax law, I think it has a lot of prerogative that is given to the URA officers, and so you'll move out of this country and you are aware of a certain level that you'll be paying your taxes. By the time you come back to the country, that has changed. The valuation system has changed. The figures have changed. So if you borrowed to go and import goods worth 20 million and you pay taxes worth 20 million, by the time you come back, you may pay taxes that are 25 million or 30 million. And that valuation, the change in the valuation is not explained. This is what we're calling tax administration. It should be done equitably and with the sensitization to traders.
All right. Let's hear from Dr. Fred Muhumuza. This gentleman explained, Joshua, that there are a number of issues that they have put across. I know you've been following these complaints and probably attended some of the meetings that have had to discuss the taxation situation in our country, but the economy generally. What's your take about the grievances of the traders?
Yeah, thank you, Kenneth. I think to begin with, tax policy is supposed to have a multiplicity of objectives. One is to raise government revenue, but two is to grow the economy. And then there is also the redistribution aspect to it, that you want to tax those who have more money and distribute it to those who do not have enough money. And that's why we have all these welfare programs of UPE and USE. But also you have a progressive tax system saying people below the threshold must not pay. So we shouldn't be looking at tax entirely to say we need the money as government and forget the other aspects. And it is within the other aspects that you bring in the interests of the taxpayer, because to begin with, the taxpayer must exist. Let's not have a debate on that. The trader, the manufacturer, the household who pay these taxes must exist. So the spending side of tax revenue must be speaking to that. What am I doing to strengthen the economy and strengthen the taxpayers. And the numbers I've been looking at, that is not coming through so strongly, that the behavior of the government budget on the expenditure side is strengthening these three entities, the businesses, who trade, the manufacturers, and then the households themselves. You need to first get to that, because if you don't, then you'll get into these complications of beginning to squeeze water out of stones. We have already seen information that quite a number of businesses are yet even to recover from COVID. Now, part of the challenge with the EFRIS is once you submit the information, what do you do with that information? One is submission of an invoice to URA means you pay the tax. And we all know there is a difference between an invoice and cash. It should have been the receipt. A receipt is a different thing. It means I've received the cash. But in Uganda, we know even a receipt does not justify all the cash. Some item of 1 million, somebody pays off 600,000 and they write on the receipt balance 400, and the guy can bring that later. But that's a different matter. But surely an invoice should not trigger a demand of agency notice on somebody's bank account. Now, that used to happen until we realized government is in arrears on those who supply government. So the ones who deal with government were kind of exempt. To say, fine, when you give an invoice to government, you will not be required to pay tax until you have been paid. Now, even when they would get paid, years have passed for some of them, or months, then they don't declare to URA. Because like sometimes, as I said, if I had a bank loan to deliver to government, and now government has taken 8 months before it pays me, possibly the profit I needed is now all converted into the prolonged interest to the bank. But that's another matter. We want the same treatment to be extended to the other private sector in their own dealings, that when they issue each other an invoice, URA should only receive that information to say there is a transaction that is happening between the two of you. You have invoiced. I expect you soon to be paid. When you get paid, I need that money. And this is really the return. So for me, that is denting these entities' cash flows. The other part on that is the threshold. This threshold of 150 million was set long time ago. Every time we are running an economy, you cluster it. Because the costs of compliance are very high, and you don't want to impose a high compliance cost on smaller entities. Let's go to the banking sector. There is a tier 1 bank. Compliance is there. What they do, tier 2 can't do. That's why you have seen some banks are actually downgrading. Because the minimum capital requirement went up. There is even tier 3. And beyond tier 3, there are many other financial institutions. But because the cost of compliance, Bank of Uganda says, you guys, go to Umrah. Don't come to me. So similarly, you want to say which trader should be on VAT registered and therefore on EFRIS? Because as Joshua has mentioned, it comes with the cost of compliance.
So they need to go back on the drawing board and determine afresh.
We need to go back and say who should be on VAT. But in any case, VAT is value-added tax. Who is adding value to a product? Is me who is buying a box of mineral water and then going to retail it bottle by bottle in a small restaurant in Waise? Am I adding value worth a tax? Because this is a value-added tax that you brought in raw material, you cooked the food. Now, after cooking the food, raw material was 100,000. The food is 180,000. The 80,000 value I've added is taxable. Now, may I begin to buy plates of food from this woman to go and hawk them on the different sites, car washing and what? What value am I adding on that plate? It is literally nothing. So we want to go back and say, what is the value that is worth a tax? And what is just somebody adding to do business? Because they are trying to make their profit and cover their costs. That definition is why the threshold had been put so high, so that the woman selling bananas by the roadside is not going to be VAT registered. Now, I was doing the numbers. If you leave it at 150, anybody who earns 400,000 is eligible to register for VAT, 400,000 a day. Look at our butchers. That is just about 10 kilograms or 20 kilograms of meat. So every butcher by the roadside should be enrolling. These fellows who sell chicken on trucks and even melons, you may find they coming. Now, you want to avoid that confusion.
But why?
On that bottom of the pyramid.
When you go to outside countries, even buying a glass of water, a bottle of water from a supermarket,
yes,
you're paying with a receipt. They give you an e-receipt, yes, meaning that they are compiling their sales in order to pay the tax at the end of the year. Yeah, why should we be an exception?
Yeah, because they have gone digital. It's just like Momo Pay.
And this is what URA is trying
But that's what we are
face.
saying. Momo Pay, if we had gone digital, and I think we need to be moving in that direction, to say every transaction should be paid electronically. Because now that electronic record will be available for URA to look at, and you don't need to burden the trader. Because already MTN and their telecom companies will already be picking up that. And they are charging you really like 400. Some of these SMSs are 150. That cost wouldn't bother anybody, but the transaction would have been captured. So we need to gradually move to electronic payment systems. Remember, we're also now taxing those, chasing people away. The very solution in the future, we are not capturing it.
All right.
So the global world pays through those electronic systems, and it is easier to capture it at that level.
Let me come to you, Joshua. Joshua, the argument is that you have been making a lot of money as traders, collecting money that is supposed to be remitted to URA as VAT, but you have been treating it as your profit, thereby dodging that tax, And worse still, that particular tax is actually being paid by the consumer. You are actually buying goods from the wholesaler at a cheaper price. You come and increase the price. The consumer pays the tax, VAT. You pass it on to them, but you're not remitting to URA. How do you want us to handle it if you're not going to be compliant with the electronic system? Because, like Dr. Mumza said, that is where the world has moved. All the other countries within the East African community are using that system.
I think it is very unfair for URA to think that the only cost that is supposed to added on any product is VAT. We have other costs.
That's what we have now.
And VAT, and URA is claiming VAT on it. But here's what I want to say, is that VAT is a consumer tax. It's transferable. If I don't remit it, it means I'm the last consumer. That's literally what it would mean.
It would mean also you have cheated.
But now what we're saying is that URA should take a deliberate effort and educate people, sensitize. Not everybody understands VAT and how it's remitted. Even for those who have gone to school and have been remitting these things, accountants, they say these filings sometimes become tricky. And this is why even professional organizations will remit late, because they're trying to struggle on how they file their returns. So VAT is a component that needs to be taken down to the traders to understand how they transfer it back to through the receipting system. But from our side, the traders want to pay taxes, and this one I want actually to engrave it. Taxes have been the tax collection has been improving over time, meaning traders are compliant, and it's just a small portion of people who are failing to comply. And why are they failing to comply? Sensitization, knowledge of the tax, and also the way it is being administered. That's why Doctor is saying that if there is a very well stipulated process that fits into the trading arena of the common people, then that tax can be collected at the right point and remitted to URA. The problem is this tax is being now claimed by URA at the wrong point. So when URA corrects that, it will really help people remit the tax. And I don't think that the traders really want to evade the tax. They just don't have the right methods on how to get the tax from the traders.
All right, Dr. Mumza, let's look at the other aspect, which is the taxes that have been imposed on fabrics and the garments. Of course, the argument has always been the tax is geared towards, reducing the rate at which used clothes are being imported into the country in order to support the nascent manufacturing section in the apparel sector here in our country. Isn't that a good move?
You would say it's a good move, but you are really speaking to two different markets. Uganda's fabric, textile, apparel industry is very expensive. A T-shirt made in Uganda is literally going to be 15,000 and above, or 20,000. So, meaning that Uganda's textile industry is speaking to a middle-income market. The people who are buying the fabrics that are imported in the second-hand or used clothes don't go beyond 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 per piece. The T-shirt there would be 3,000. So you are punishing a different industry to save another industry. Fabric and cotton industry in Uganda is too expensive for most of the majority in Ugandans, the households that are poor, who are literally below 4,000 shillings a day, the $1 a day. We have about 8.3 million households who are surviving on less than $1 a day. And $1 is now 3,800. And when we say less than, some of them are not anywhere near the 3,800 mark. They're actually at 2,000. Now, these people can only be dressed out of downtown where they go and say every piece you touch is 2,000 or 3,000. So you're not going to develop your industry, which is local, and its minimum threshold is 15,000, by trying to punish the people who are buying clothes at below 3,000. So we need to take that in and say, taxing these individuals is not going to help nurture the Ugandan textile industry. You are only adding pain and insult to the very poor fellows. Because remember, $3 per kilo is actually 12,000. Tax alone. You don't want to add that to a jean or a raincoat that this poor person puts on who has to go out in the night to guard their crops or do whatever they are doing. So we need to be logical and understand the nature of the economy, because taxes speak to the economy. And as I've said, they should not just only be about raising revenue, or I'm trying to protect a certain sector, a certain group of manufacturers, but also should be developing the country by looking at what strength am I giving to the households through tax policy. So this is a tax we objected to when it came, and I'm surprised that 2-3 years down the road, it is still on our books and people still want to do a study on it. This one should go away. Let's go back to the re-evaluation. Let me pay tax on the value of the product. Because even these kilos you are looking at, all the products are not homogeneous. Some of them are literally worn-out shoes, others are jeans, others I don't know what. All sorts of things are in that indicator. And you need to open up or to understand what's in the indicator and tax it appropriately.
Well, Joshua, what's your take on this issue of taxes on garments? But also you are complaining that under the same particular issue, there are investors who are kicking you out of business.
One, about that issue, we as traders think that when you talk about garments, it comes with the fashion, it comes with variety, it comes with the choice. And if you restrict entry of other garments, you are locking us to the few manufacturers that are in the country. So our question would be, what was your thinking when you do that? And the reasons that have been given is that we want to develop our local textile industry. Then our questions started being, what are the backward leakages or to those industries? You want to ask, how many cotton farmers do we have in the country? How many silk farmers do we have in the country? And how many of those are supplying these industries? Then you want to speak to the value added. How many factories do we have in the country? What's the capacity of production? Then you want to speak to the forward leakages, which is quality that is coming out, the variety, the fashion, and all these the industry is scoring low on those. It's at its infancy. It cannot meet the demand of the market, does not meet the quality. So the other issue on that is that many of the industries they're speaking about, actually we found that they are importing finished garments and putting them together to make a trouser, to make a shirt, to make T-shirts, but they are importing what they call raw materials, and it's not cotton, it's not silk. It's a finished product, and then they're putting it together. Chiembe has been doing that for all the time it has been existed. So what is the difference? And why should the people who are importing finished material stop the supply chain of second-hand clothes that are being imported?
All right.
And I think that when we import, we give a chance to the local market to see quality, copy, and improve.
All right. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. We need to go for a break now. We will continue discussing the outcomes of the engagement between the traders and the government on the strike that is going on. The Ministry of Finance had a meeting with the traders. They have asked for 2 weeks, but the traders seem not to agree. President Yoweri Museveni is planning to meet the traders on Friday. Will that come out with a solution? Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. When we return, Dr. Fred Muhumuza and Joshua Mwerere from the traders, Kasita, will continue to share their insights.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Thank you very much for staying with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. We're continuing to reflect on the strike that was called by Kampala City Traders, but we're also hearing that the same strike has spread out to other cities in Luwero and in Masaka, in Luwero district and in Masaka city, where also traders closed down their shops. The Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development did issue a statement asking the traders to actually reopen their shops and resume business pending attending to their issues within 2 weeks. I asked Honorable Matia Kasaija if he could be part of this discussion or send somebody to represent the ministry to add value to this discussion, but they said I should refer to the statement that was issued. And one of the things they have actually decided, Mr. Mwerere, is actually to open up URA office within Kikubo, where the sensitization you are calling for will be taking place on IFRIS, but also to provide technical and any other form of support to the traders and any other taxpayers to actually understand better what IFRIS stands for. They are also willing to waive penalties that had been imposed on traders who had not yet complied. In accordance with the law, the Commissioner General of URA is expected to present a list of traders to the ministry for scrutiny and also a decision being taken. Now, one of the other issues that featured during this discussion between the traders and the ministry is the issue of competition. Apparently, you have people who are unfairly competing with you, Mr. Mwerere. Can you explain that?
We have an issue of trade order in this country. Very many investors come in and they have an investment license. They are given concessions. They don't pay taxes. They have free land, and some of them have free access to utilities. And so they are producing and manufacturing within the country. And we as traders, we go to them and commit a bulk of money to purchase their items and take them downtown so we can sell in pieces to our customers. The same investors will move next door, open up a wholesale shop next to you and start selling wholesale, and they go another mile, open up a retail shop somewhere in the outskirts of Kampala.
So they pick from their wholesale shop,
from
the
their
retail
wholesale
shop. Okay.
Got the retail shop, and then some of them have gone an extent of go to the moving markets. They hawk the same products. So I'll give you an example. We used to import gumboots from China and Kenya. Then you will find that a manufacturer of gumboots has a wholesale shop downtown, has a retail shop in other outcasts of Kampala, and the same people, you will see them driving a truck of gumboots to the outcasts and sell to shift markets and moving markets.
Well, they are extending the goods to the people at a cheaper rate.
Now, where does that leave the supply chain?
Deep in the villages where the farmers are, where you cannot reach.
That's where our market comes from. That's where the supply chain for the local traders is. And those are the customers that we supply to. So when we sell at the same price with the factory, with the investor, then the competitiveness goes away, and because that one is the manufacturer, they will have competing advantage. So they will take away the entire supply chain, and the trader moves out of business. So we are saying that if you have an investment license, can they be restricted to investment and production at that level? Then we shall have local traders who are doing wholesale. Then we shall have local traders who are doing retail shops. And their licenses are there. We have trading licenses, we have a category of taxes or license for a wholesale shop, and we have those for retail. And our people pay them. Now, the factory that does not pay these and they go ahead to do the last mile distribution, then they kill the essence of trade.
All right. Matia Kasaija explains this issue, the remedies that are actually being taken. For instance, he says there is a law whose regulations are being finalized. That's the law on competition. It was recently passed and assented to by the president. But he also said the Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives has been directed to issue a circular to Kampala Capital City Authority and all chief administrative officers and town clerks to ensure that foreigners or aliens are not issued with hawking licenses. Does that address your problem, your complaint on this particular issue?
Yeah, that does. It speaks to what we've called for over a long period of time. And we want to see that happen. And we look forward to seeing all the foreigners be restricted to what their licenses speak to, as opposed to being part of the entire supply chain.
Dr. Mumza, what's your take on this issue of competition? Competition, according to Joshua's explanation, you can call it throat cutting, if I may say.
Yeah, throat cutting, of course, it's a serious competition, but we have opened up. These are the issues we want to rethink. We opened up trade and the economy, not only internally but also externally. Uganda doesn't seem to have any restrictions. Other countries sometimes do. And many people have said, well, that's the position for Uganda that we've taken, and it comes with costs. And these are the costs. You are competing with people who are not even using a bank loan. They are what we call supplier-induced credit. Somebody is in the business of selling used cars. He receives cars at no cost. He only gets a commission for the car he has sold. That guy is in an international network. The Ugandan who is going to go into trade of cars must go and borrow some money from Stanbic, Stanchart, or whoever, go out there and bring a car, and he has borrowed at 19, 20, or even some of them 25%. So that already creates an unfair ground, because this guy must add that cost when he's trying to sell his car or whenever he's trying to do any trade, including stocking. So how do you level the ground for Ugandans? We are not a competitive economy, and this is clearly coming through the indications of the real effective exchange rate for Uganda that the Bank of Uganda generates religiously, quite very well for us. We have seen it trending into an area of non-competitiveness. So our interest rates are driven by government borrowing. They don't make the trader competitive with the one from China or the one from India, even the ones from Tanzania. Our electricity is expensive, our land structures, our data, everything seems to be expensive, working against the trader. Now, some of the other fellows coming from abroad even have exemptions given by the same Uganda, which are not passed on to the local trader. So that unfairness clearly puts the Ugandan trader against the wall and leaves the others to roam freely in the market. Now, how do you cure that? It's going to be another nightmare of an issue that we must speak to. I was specifically looking, and this is also going back to what taxes do you collect. I was specifically looking at imports. 10 years ago, our biggest source of imports was India and China and Japan. India and China were above $1 billion of imports. Tanzania was below 50 million in 2013. We're importing from Tanzania goods worth less than 50 million. Today, Tanzania is number 2. Last year in 2023, we imported goods from Tanzania worth over $1.2 billion. Now, these are coming at no tax. The bulk of them, because this is EAC, we have said within EAC, no taxes. Now, John Musingu is my friend. No matter how hard he wants to replace that tax loss, he cannot do it. And that is now beginning to show you that traders, even in Uganda and the traders in Tanzania, are finding it easier to bring goods manufactured in Tanzania and bring them into Uganda to those magnitudes of having increased from less than $50 million to over 1.2 billion. The taxes for John Derafon Customs have got to go down. And John really has done well, and his team. I'm just saying John because of URA's head. They have done well on domestic taxes. They have increased them like no other Commissioner General has happened. But what has really dented them is customs. Now, if government is saying, I need money to run government, we need to go back and say the billions of taxes that were coming from customs because of the change of importation sources, how are we going to replace them? Those are, for me, nightmare issues, but which we cannot ignore, even as we want to harass the smaller domestic player to pay more tax. We've got to look at a point and say our tax cannot be what they were 5 years ago because of these new dynamics that have come through.
All right. We have comments coming in from the listeners, and I'll begin with this. One listener actually writes in and says, why are the MPs' allowances not taxed? They can't feel the pain since they are not taxed. That's it. They do not have the moral authority to pass a tax law that exempts them. He said, VAT should be charged at the point of payment, not on point of invoicing. Otherwise, invoicers are forced to pay VAT, yet they have not collected it. You know, Honorable Dr. Muhumuza, there's been an argument that everyone should pay their fair tax. And then we have this comment coming in from a listener that there are actually people who are not paying tax, yet when you look around, they are well paid.
It's a fair comment that doesn't even need a discussion, it needs action. Can we discuss, can Parliament come out and pronounce on that? Because we have a lot of...
They are the ones who pass the laws, the tax bills.
Exactly, and this is what they should be speaking to. I also have other entities, people out there who are investing in government bonds of 10 years and above, who are being taxed at 10%. Yet a trader, when they make a profit, is being required to pay, and the manufacturer is required to pay 30% of that profit. Now, somebody who is making money by sitting at home because they put their money in a government bond of 10 years, that fellow is only being taxed at 10%. That's another area you want to look into. So I've said, and that's the person you'd redistribute. You can tax those fellows more and go and look after the very poor. And we saw the information from financial sector deepening Uganda the other day. 70% of Ugandans are surviving on borrowing.
And that's the debate that is going on even in the US elections, taxing the rich in order to subsidize the poor.
Yeah, and that's part of the tax purpose. Now, that is not happening, that the rich in Uganda, we are not taxing them. Instead, we are taxing the poor to finance the rich. Now, that ideological economic issue needs to be resolved. Otherwise, we are going back to the 1992 Clinton campaign slogan, economy stupid.
Well, Joshua, do you traders have that feeling that you are the ones actually carrying the tax burden and there are people who are not paying? Probably those could be some of the things that you are hiding. And even some people have actually said you are not happy with the way the taxes are being used. We have also had that coming out from your leaders.
That's very true. Like Doctor says, it is something that we've spoken about severally. There's a lot of tax entrenchment as opposed to tax widening. URA prefers to go to the people they already know and add more tax thresholds, drag those that even don't have to pay tax and drag them onto the system so that they can easily tax them. And they have done the same thing with the corporate institutions, and everybody feels the weight. We are saying, can URA please diversify the base? Like Doctor says, the bonds, the charge on them can go high. We have other sectors, the agriculture sector. It should be taxed.
Maybe we are asking the wrong person because URA simply implements the law.
I think, URA is the one that comes to collect. And what we are saying is that...
It collects what has been decided already.
Exactly, and we want them to give feedback to the entire system. But also we think that the entire system is listening because we've written these letters and these arguments all over. We think that the agriculture sector should be taxed. We have a sector like the cattle. I think the cattle sector is not being charged. We have people with thousands of heads of cattle. And we think that if they tax them, because that's value, every time something grows from a calf to a grown-up bull, there is value that has increased.
That's value addition.
It's value addition, and therefore the charge must be placed there. 18% want to see it on such products, so that by the time they come to the market, there is value at the gate.
How would you collect that tax? Is it from the farm gate or where would that?
Actually, the accountants have even
the market?
Have even created a standard on agricultural products. The change in an animal in terms of beef can be valued and taxed. And we're just saying URA needs to widen the tax base. So I think that the known tax base has been entrenched on, and we need to see ways on how we lift that weight by spreading it across other sectors.
All right, we have more comments coming. Doctor, please explain this logic the government is using to execute this. When you invoice, URA wants you to pay VAT immediately. Meanwhile, I'll be paid 90 days later after delivery. I really don't understand this. It's killing us, the small guys. That's a comment there from that listener. Then we have another comment from another one, Ariko, who writes in and says, you supply government with anything, they can take more than 2 years to pay. But it's the same government that is the one which is penalizing you for late filing of returns. That's a comment from Ariko there. Then we have another one, hello Spectrum, the problem with URA is not being fair to the traders. An example being the presumptive tax, that is income tax for small businesses. Going by URA's taxation policy, presumptive tax for small businesses does not go above 900,000 Uganda shillings. But you'll find URA giving invoices of 2 million to 3 million against the law. We have another comment from Anthony, who is listening again from Kibuli. Good evening, Spectrum. I'm not in support of going back to the old way of taxation. Valuation by quality. There was a time I brought a Rolex watch from China, but I was given high tax valuation because they thought it was original Rolex watch. Let them reduce the tax and also reduce the price of that URA tax machine so that all can have it to ease our tax payment. That is Anthony from QD. Very quickly, let's first respond to these issues that have been raised by the listener. And I'll begin with you, Joshua.
The listeners are very right. I think the taxes that have been put across in the different at the different points, they need to be revised to be able to accommodate what's coming in and how it's coming in. The point of collection is very important. And every time URA misfires on the point of collection, then we receive these backlashes in terms of tax administration. URA thinks broadly how it really administers the taxes and also the justification, because people really want to pay their taxes, but where is the justification of that new threshold of the prerogative of you changing what I thought I would pay to a higher bar? The justification sometimes is not there, and you don't have time to ask anybody. Everybody you ask, they say that has been decided by the commissioner, and so that's it. So tax justification is very important. The point of tax administration, the style of tax administration is very important. We also calling for tax. We're calling for over taxation on some of the products. We're saying URA should revise the way it's collecting, because the point of collection sometimes returns at 2 points, and you're paying the same tax twice.
All right.
So we also are calling for tax morality. URA seems to say our role is to collect, but the real pain is in how the taxes are being utilized at the other end. And that's what we're speaking to, that it's not only collection. There should be a point where these taxes pay back to the businesses in terms of services.
All right. More comments coming in. Thank you for the program. The call for Revenue Authority to train traders should be vice versa, so that IFRIS is designed in consistency with how the traders conduct business. This listener seems to suggest that the traders should be the ones actually to train URA on how to use the system.
Yes, we've spoken to that. If I might just say something about that. We've spoken to that. We've said government failed to do business. And government was clear, said we can't run business, we don't have the capacity, the ability, and the knowledge to run the businesses. And they brought in privatization. Now, when the traders give you an opinion on trade, why do you refuse if you don't know how to run business?
All right, more comments. Kenneth, well done. VAT is a buyer tax. While URA is stressed by consumers, they have completely forgotten that the registered traders have already paid 75% of VAT at buying from the importers, manufacturer and manufacturers. Secondly, every system doesn't have provisions, other costs that are not online, for example, expenses like loading, offloading, border transportation and corruption, yet it is a reality. Actually, it's not an accounting package. Remove an accounting package. We need to rethink this, and I think we deserve better. That's a comment from Henry listening in from Chiwenda. Then another comment from Nelly in Kisasi. Enforcing of these distinctive trading licenses should be fully implemented. Retailers are struggling and barely making ends meet. My mother, who has been a retailer of cosmetics for over 20 years, is competing with wholesalers of those same products. Please help us balance the boat. Then we have another comment, Isaac, who writes and says, let URA help us understand why we pay VAT at importation and then come and still charge it under IFRIS. Let government reintroduce graduated tax. This commission will end there and then. This confusion will end there and then. That's a comment there. One last one. Over taxation, excellent Dr. Mhumza for thoroughly dissecting the issues. I wish Ugandan government and the URA can listen and do the rightful thing. URA is fond of comparing the tax threshold of Denmark, Tanzania, and Kenya being higher than ours. To me, that is total bullshit. As long as Ugandans don't practically see and appreciate the services funded by the exorbitant taxes, there will be a problem with paying taxes. The government has adamantly continued to operate in a luxurious manner. That's a comment there coming from one of the listeners. Dr. Mhumza, your responses to some of these comments.
I think they are right, and these are the issues we are saying. It's not just EFRIS. There are so many other things. As I said earlier, when you sign in on EFRIS, and really the URA has realized some of these issues, that once you put somebody on EFRIS, you might find a person who has been declaring 4 million sales per day actually has been doing 9. So he has been under declaring. But as Joshua said here, Ugandans sometimes we don't know how to price. I've been to restaurants. Serena will price you and say this meal was 20,000. They will add the 18% VAT on the 20,000. Now Ugandans, when they buy shoes, they're only looking at their cost of the shop, the rent, make a small profit, and then sometimes there's no profit. Now any difference between my purchase price and sale price may not even include VAT, because I didn't even know how to put VAT. And in any case, as I said earlier, did I add any value to be taxed at this point by moving the item from Chikobo to Waise? Have I added any value worth a tax? Now, we need to understand the nature of the business. But now there have been issues that the moment somebody goes on EFRIS and this information is discovered, we go in and audit. Now, you begin to say, oh, you've been cheating taxes for the last 5 years. Now you must pay all the arrears. Now, this business of today, post-COVID, even as COVID is still lingering on some of the effects, cannot afford to pay the taxes of today, the high interest rates of today. We know what Bank of Uganda has been doing, driving up interest rates and government borrowing itself, and also pay the taxes of the last 5 years. You are literally killing off this tax. And I'm glad the minister said all the penalties, let's get that information, and he will use his discretionary power to waive them. I also want to propose that, can we say, like the Bible says, go and sin no more? Now that we have seen you didn't pay taxes in 2016 and 2018, 2023, please, sin no more, let's move on. Because the moment you go back historically, you are going to kill some of these businesses. Can we have that as some of these? So the pre-audits and audits have also been a pain to some of these taxpayers. And some of them have said, even after you have resolved with one entity of URA, tomorrow another one reopens the same case and they are back in your shop. Are they looking for kickbacks? Are they not looking? Because I thought it was the same entity. That once a case is closed, it is closed. Nobody should be tried in court on the same crime.
One of the listeners he actually said that they even budget for corruption in order to... they include it as part of the cost of their business.
Yeah, because
I wonder
exactly, because I would begin to think of foul play. If a team from URA has come and we have resolved the issue, why is another team coming? Are they looking for me to bribe them off? So we need to clean up some of these, because the encumbrances on business, and as I've said, they impose what we call transactional costs on the business. The time you're spending, the documentation, the trauma, all sorts of things, and the disruption from the business that you do, which is your core line.
All right. Dr. Mhumza, I'll ask you this question. There's a meeting on Friday. We don't know if it will go ahead. President Yoweri Museveni has been indicated plans to meet the traders then.
Yes.
Do you think we are going to see this thing coming to an end?
No, of course, there are very many issues. Finance has said they need 2 weeks to do the analysis on some of the issues. Of course, some of the issues will need time. But there are some issues that can actually be handled there and then. The beauty with this is Parliament is discussing taxes.
At the moment.
So some of these issues that will come out of that Friday meeting can automatically be put into the system so that come 1st of July, they stop. But some of these waivers, they need to be part of this discussion to say we have forgiven those who URA was supposed to pick this much from, under the observation that if they struggle to pay this, the businesses will collapse, and in any case, we won't recover the tax that is due anyway. So some of those can come out of this meeting. The tax on kilograms, based on kilograms, that can go away. Of course, it is still in the law, but we can waive further collection until the end of this year, and next year we shouldn't tax that. VAT, of course, can't move below 16%.
All
I know
right.
some people wanted it to go there. The threshold can be lifted.
All right.
That we can do immediately as we go forward and we close this financial year nicely.
All right. With that, we come to the end of Spectrum today. Thank you very much, Dr. Fred Muhumza and Mr. Joshua Mwerere from Kasita. And thank you very much, dear listeners, for contributing to this show. Tomorrow, same time, another topic. Until then, I wish you a good evening. Up next, we have the news in English. Thereafter, the Soul Train with BB Jr.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.